Hello friends, operator Starsky with a daily update from Kiev, Ukraine. Today is day 473 of the terror Russian invasion, and 6 Shahed drones were shot down overnight over the Kharkiv and Sumy Oblast. Also, almost 8,000 Russian terrorists, 17 tanks, 20 artillery systems were cancelled on the Russian side in a single day. The Russia's armored column was high-marched yesterday while moving from Energodar to Velika Bilozerka. Also, 59th Brigade derussified the invaders not far from Staromykhalivka. The crew of a Russia's BM-21 Grad yesterday celebrated the Alcoholics Anonymous Day. The party was a blast. This joke never gets old, not in Ukraine. Never gets funny either. Now, the Ukrainian drone operators had a busy day. This Russian crew of T-80 had no Ukrainian visa on them, and you don't cross the border like that. It's disrespectful. And this Russian terrorist was speeding. You don't do that in a foreign country. It's dangerous. What's wrong with those Russians anyway? Do they behave like that in your country too? Please let me know in the comments. Anyways, judging from his last mugshot, he didn't expect to meet his great-grandpa at that moment, but they can finally be happy together. Remember, yesterday I showed you a Russian company fleeing from combat near Velika Novosilka. 68th Brigade reports liberating Blagodatne village near Velika Novosilka, proving it with a footage from the ground. In Taria, approximately 5 Russian companies were wiped out, according to the reports of the Tavria Operative Command. The Russian neo-Nazi Andrei Keller came to Ukraine and got denazified, because only Ukrainians are doing that properly nowadays, and the fascist scum will always find its grave in the Ukrainian soil. There's all kinds of weird people coming to Ukraine. For example, this Belarusian propagandist AZARIONAK made a video from the flooded area blaming Zelensky and the Americans. The dude literally came to Ukraine wearing a combat gear, and I bet he didn't arrive through Boryspil International Airport, and now staying illegally in a foreign country together with the armed Russian invaders. He barks about Zelensky and the Americans, and that very moment, his Russian comrades are shelling the Ukrainian civilians in the flooded area while they're desperately trying to escape the flooding. The representatives of the International Crime Court arrived to the flooded area in Ukraine to investigate the Russian committed genocide and the results of the crime against humanity and nature. Unlike the self-isolated terrorist Russian regime, Ukraine is always open to all kinds of international investigators and media, like it happened in Bucha, Izum, Kherson, and other places where the Russian invaders committed their crimes. And speaking of the Russian crimes in Ukraine, as of yesterday, 81,000 cases were documented, including almost 67,000 cases of violation of the laws of war. 53 Russian torture facilities were discovered across Ukraine on the liberated territories. It was also confirmed that almost 500 Ukrainian children were murdered by the Russian invaders, 1,000 wounded, almost 400 children were missing as a result of the Russian invasion. Also, more than 19,000 Ukrainian children were kidnapped and forcefully deported to the terrorist Russian Federation. All this data was provided by Ukraine to the International Crime Court because those victims exist and they have names, unlike the made-up people of Donbass murdered by Kiev junta and other bullshit used by Putin as an excuse to invade a peaceful country. Speaking of the people of Donbass, you do remember Pavel Gubarev, who admitted that the Russians, who claimed to have been saving them, in reality used the local male population as a cannon fodder. This is one of them. In his video, he says that almost everyone in his unit had wounds, but the Russians didn't pay them compensations since October last year. Of course, it happens because the Russians don't give a single damn about the so-called people of Donbass, technically Ukrainian people. Also, the Russians need money to feed Scott Ritter, Richard Medhurst, Patrick Lancaster, Gonzalo Lira, and other talking heads, and exactly that's why the wounded Donbass terrorists had no financial support since October 2022. Meanwhile, one of the few remaining international corporations in Russia, the health and hygiene company ISCT, ceased its business in the terrorist country. Now all those people who feel nostalgic for the Soviet Union will be able to wipe using the old newspapers, like in the good old times. My name is Operator Starsky. As always, be safe.